Hi everyone, I'm Miss Lydia from the Boston Library. We are on location today for the first part of our craft project. Today we are making a couple of different types of decorative bookends. The first option that I have, you can really use any sort of decorative item that you want, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you what the 3D printer can create as far as decorative items go. So we are going to make a small bird to put on to our bookend. Again, you can buy something like this as well. This is just an option. So we have our Cura software open here on the laptop, and I'm going to open a new project. The settings on the printer are all set for our PLA plastic, so our temperatures are all set already. I'm going to open a file in STL format. So I have this small bird saved that I found online from a free source website. And then I need to adjust a couple of settings on the side here. So I'm going to allow it to generate supports. And what that will do is that any part of the bird that overhangs, so the wings, the beak, anything that would be essentially floating in the air, the printer will generate a support system that you break off afterwards. So I've clicked to enable that, and then in order to get it to adhere very solidly to the build plate to prevent it from sliding or moving, I am going to have the build plate adhesion changed to a raft. And then I'm going to go ahead and start that print. At this point, the 3D printer is preparing to begin its print. The extruder is heating. You can gauge the temperature on the monitor here. And the build plate will also heat slightly so that the plastic adheres better here. The whole process for an item like this with the settings that we currently have on it will take about 3 hours, but you can set it and let it go. So we will check back in shortly to see the progress that it is making. The 3D printer works by taking a spool of PLA plastic that we have here, and it feeds it through a heated nozzle here, and that melts the plastic, which quickly cools on the build plate and builds small layers based on the computer file that we have it set to print. There you can see the image of our bird on our Cura software, and you can see the progress being made by the 3D printer. So our raft has been built, and you can see the supports taking shape under the wings and between the 2 feet. You can also make out the grid being used as the infill. So rather than this being a solid piece of plastic, it will make a grid shape inside based on the density that we have selected, and then fill in solid lines around that so it appears to be a solid object when it's finished. At this point, the 3D printer has finished the bird print, and it is available to take off of the build plate. So I'm going to carefully lift up from the raft and loosen it. And then you can see what it looks like. You can see that the supports are still attached here. And then I'm going to take some pliers and remove those supports. So I'll just carefully work around the beak, and they should just twist right off. Once the supports are removed, you can see our bird. He's pretty shiny right now, so I'm actually going to sand him down just a little bit so that I can paint him. The plastic does come in different colors, but we tend to stick with whatever reel is on at the time. It's easier to feed all the way through and not adjust temperatures once it's going, but it does come in different colors. If you wanted to print your own item from the library, we charge 5 cents per gram of the finished weight. So prior to taking the supports off, we weigh the item and then calculate approximately what it would cost. So for an item about this size with the infill that we used, it would be about $4. The next part of the process is to pick what you're going to use as your base. You can use a sizable chunk of wood. You could actually make an L-shaped wood bracket, or use part of a brick or a stone, anything that's going to be heavy enough and solid enough to use as a bookend. I found 2 partial bricks here that fit my birds quite well, and what I'm going to do is take my spray paint and cover all surfaces of those. So I'm going to cover all of the sides of the bricks and all of the surfaces of the birds. Whenever you use spray paint, you should make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area, cover all of your surfaces way beyond where you think you might be spraying, and make sure that you shake your spray paint very carefully. And then the other piece of advice is to go very light with your coats. Do multiple light coats. It's going to allow for the best coverage and the best drying. Also remember to move your items in different directions so that you get all of those surfaces covered as well. Here are my pieces after a single solid coat of a hammered copper look spray paint. Now that my spray paint is done and dried, I have two more very easy steps to do to complete our bookends. So I'm going to set my birds aside for now, and so that our bricks don't scratch any surface that we put them on, I'm going to line them with felt on the bottom. So I have a piece of brown felt here. It'll be fairly subtle. It does have a sticky back, but I'm going to add a little bit of extra glue to it as well. I'm going to place my brick down on an edge and trace with a pen around it. Since these are kind of irregular shapes, I want to make sure that I get a template for it. You could also, if you choose, put a piece of felt on the inside. The paint really does seal off this rough edge, but depending on what type of paint you're using or what type of surface you're using, you might want to put some felt against where it's going to be sitting against the books. With my two templates marked out, I'm going to cut those out just inside those lines so that it'll fit without overlapping the edges. Once you get your felt pieces trimmed out, you can set them on the bottom side of your bricks, make sure that they fit. You might need to trim a few edges, make sure that they don't hang too far over any of the edges. And then I'm going to peel off my backing. You can do this with just regular felt as well. You could also use any kind of a rubbery material, something that's just going to make it a little bit softer. And then to just give a little bit more security to this, I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on that surface as well and flip it over and secure it. I'm going to repeat the exact same process with the other brick as well. And at this point, I'm going to figure out how I want to orient them. So basically, I want my flatter sides to be on the inside where it's actually holding up the books. And then it's whether I want the more rough edge like this facing forward or the smoother edge. I'm going to go for a more rustic look, so I'm going to leave that edge facing out and figure out which bird I want on which brick. You want to make sure that whatever piece you're using as your decorative top, that it's not hanging in towards the center. You want to make sure that you don't have anything bumping up against where your books are going to be, because it'll loosen this up and knock it off. So once I kind of have those placed where I want them, I'm just going to put a whole bunch of hot glue down on the base of the bird and get it stuck to my brick. And there is one of my finished bird bookends. So you can see the one design there and the other bird as well. Now remember, you can use any sort of decorative item you want, any kind of plastic figurine, actually any material figurine that you want to use. You can paint them any color. These just happen to be the birds that I printed off on the 3D printer. And there are the finished bookends. Our second technique for bookends is very simple. You're going to need 2 vinyl records that you're willing to destroy and some boiling water. You're going to want a baking dish that is large enough for your record to fit in. So you want it to be at least the width of the record. You're not going to submerge the entire thing, so it doesn't have to be too deep. I'm going to take my boiling water and pour it carefully into the dish. And then once I have a couple of inches of water in there, I'm going to figure out which way I want my record to face so that the label's up, and I'm going to set it into the boiling water. And then I'm just going to slowly push down. Now it is going to curl up on you, so before that vinyl hardens, you're going to want to take it out and flatten it back out again. You may need to reheat your water in between. You do want it to stay very hot for this process, and it might be helpful to have a spoon or a spatula or something to push down the one end. So again, I'm going to find my upright position and set that into the water and let it begin to fold. To get a decent amount of stability, you kind of want to go down to the base of the label. And then use your spatula or wooden spoon to, again, flatten that base out. And then you'll basically end up with just an L shape. You can follow the same procedure on this one. I do have some black felt that I'm going to use to line the bottom. Again, just so that it doesn't scratch and it doesn't slide quite as easily. So again, I'm going to take my felt, place it face down with the backing up, and trace the bottom of my record. And I'm going to cut that out just inside the lines again so that it doesn't hang over the edges. And then on these, since the surface is so much smoother, I'm not going to add the extra glue. You always can, or if you don't have felt that is backed in this sticky material, you can add that glue as well. And my record book end is all done. Here you can see what our record book ends look like. They're very low profile. They work better for wider books. You can use smaller records, but you don't want to go too small because you do lose a little bit of stability. The vinyl is fairly flexible, so you want to make sure that you have a big enough surface space so that it's fairly supportive. Here you can see our finished bird bookends with some books in between them so you can kind of get the full effect. Again, remember, you can get as creative with these as you want. You can use whatever type of decorative plastic items you have and just something heavy enough on the bottom. So a stone, a brick, an L-shaped piece of wood will work as well. Paint it all the same color, line it with felt, and you're good to go. If you have any questions, comment below and I'll try to help you out, and I will see you next week.